You know what I love, right, Rico?
You love a lot of things.
I love moistness.
Please don't.
Yes, I know a lot of people don't like that word, but I happen to love that word, moist.
Oh, well, you know what you call a dry towelette?
Moist.
A napkin.
Because let me tell you something about all this moisture going on today, you guys. Because Measurement Standards Group is to vote on adding Cannabis Moisture Loss proposal to, that's right, you guys, the Federal Handbook. Members at this year's annual meeting of the National Conference of Weights and Measures, the NCWM, are set to vote this week on a proposal concerning acceptable moisture loss in cannabis plant material, a limit meant to protect patients and consumers from buying packages that weigh less than advertised. If the item is approved, it will be added to a Federal Standards Handbook, you guys. The proposal would provide national guidance to both hemp and marijuana markets, despite marijuana remaining illegal at the federal level. Set for a vote at NCWM's annual meeting on Wednesday, the plan would establish a 3% tolerance limit for moisture in cannabis, allowing the net weight of cannabis packages to fall slightly as the result of moisture loss. The 3% threshold is similar to that for other products like flour or dry pasta, though the cannabis proposal would only allow moisture loss, not absorption of moisture that would increase the net weight. In a quote, as written, there would be no limit to going over the declared weight of the package, Charlie Rutherford, co-chair of NCWM's Cannabis Task Force, told Marijuana Moment in an email. The proposal is aimed at accounting for moisture loss that occurs after marijuana and hemp material is harvested. If it passes at this week's meeting, the guidance would be published in January in the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST Handbook on Packaged Goods. And in a quote, in the retail cannabis trade, insufficient attention and guidance is given to moisture migration in or out of some cannabis packaging. The item on the NCWM agenda says, and as a result, the contents of some cannabis flower packaging have to be found to be underweight, resulting in the patient or consumer paying for weight they are not actually receiving. In Oregon, for example, underweight complaints are the #1 consumer complaint, according to the agenda's original justification for the proposal. For the fairness and safety of cannabis consumers, it says a weight variance based on enforcement of acceptable moisture ranges needs to be established, and the 3% number is not only consistent with moisture variances that apply to other materials, but also aligns with California's rules, the document says. Some cannabis is very susceptible to environmental conditions, easily losing or gaining moisture, with consequences impacting net quality, degradation of active cannabinoids, and or microbial proliferation, depending on the situation. The proposal says these are just some of the reasons. There are many concerns and uncertainties surrounding the moisture allowances of cannabis. The 3% variance allowance, which Rutherford said is better thought of as an established gray area than a limit, isn't a free pass to packaged flour at 97.1% of the declared weight, he said. CBWM expects zero deviation on weight, he said, adding the allowance of gray area is taken into context during the packaging inspection. For instance, for a package inspected 2 weeks after packaging, losing a couple percentages in weight while on the shelf could be viewed as allowable. On the other hand, if the package is a couple of percentage low moments after packaging, it would not warrant further investigation. And if a package allowance is gray, then the stop would happen. And NIST, for its part, said in an executive summary about the change that it's not opposed to this item. However, there are significant issues that need to be addressed before this item is ready for adoption. Noting comments from Walter Wilson, a NIST research scientist who often handles cannabis issues, the agency encouraged a broader market sample of cannabis products over a more extended study period. The study cited by CBWM Wilson covered a 12-week period, but cannabis cannot be stored for significantly longer periods of time prior to sale. And Wilson also noted that package type could affect moisture loss, noting that the direct correlation between moisture loss or gain and how well a seal can be made with a particular type of packaging material. Glass containers seem to retain more moisture, and NIST said, and therefore it should not be included in the 3% moisture allowance. NIST also recommended that NCWM's Cannabis Task Group reach out to the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp, ATACH, to better demonstrate where the industry is on this topic. Attach sent a letter in April in support of a clear and standardized moisture allowance, saying it would enable cannabis businesses to maintain best distribution practices while aligning with regulatory expectations, as well as facilitate a more uniform regulatory landscape across jurisdictions, enforcing compliance and enforcement efforts. If the plan is approved at this week's NCWM meeting, which began on Sunday and runs through Thursday, it could still see minor changes before being inserted into the NIST handbook on packaged goods. Rutherford explained to Marijuana Moments that NIST, he added, is a technical advisor and non-voting member of the NCWM. The NCWM members also considered taking up the issue of a universal label for cannabis products, but ultimately decided against it. And while several groups have pushed for a universal label for cannabis products in the past, some at the NCWM who considered the proposal noted that members weren't qualified to consider the health-related aspects of the proposal. Rutherford told Marijuana Moment that the proposal is permanently dead. The withdrawn item was a proposal for establishing a universal intoxicating symbol, he said. I brought it into the process, but as expected, it was voted down by the Cannabis Task Group because it's outside the scope of what NCWM does. Another item considered for this meeting has to do with what types of scales are appropriate for weighing cannabis products, but that matter is not scheduled for a vote at this year's meeting. They should use Tanitas, in my opinion. And at its annual meeting last year, NCWM added 2 new cannabis items to its Federal Standards Handbook, one establishing a definition for cannabis and another dealing with the water activity of bulk unprocessed plant matter. In 2022, NCWM focused on cannabis potency measurement, packaging, labeling, and other issues related to products derived from the plant. How to reliably test marijuana and hemp have increasingly become key issues nationally, resulting both from the legalization of hemp in 2018 and the growing number of states with legal marijuana markets. And earlier this month, NIST released a new report as part of a project designed to help testing laboratories ensure accuracy and precision in testing cannabis products. And the report focuses on determining cannabinoid content in plant material samples following earlier reports on moisture content and certain toxins of heavy metals. NIST also this month announced that it's begun selling a cannabis reference material aimed at helping testing laboratories more reliably determine the potency and purity of marijuana and hemp, but the material isn't cheap, with 4.5 grams of the stuff on offer for $783, you guys. The Drug Enforcement Administration also recently clarified that as far as it's concerned, that threshold includes not only Delta-9 THC itself, but also the related cannabinoid THCA, which is converted into Delta-9 when heated, a process known as decarboxylation. And lawmakers at the state and federal levels have also begun looking at standards for Delta-8 THC, a psychoactive compound commonly derived from hemp products, and some congressional legislation, meanwhile, would ban most consumable hemp-based cannabinoid products entirely. And already, many products sold as hemp meet the federal definition of marijuana. NIST analysis earlier this year found that the vast majority of smokable hemp product samples, about 93%, contain more than 0.3% THC. As law enforcement works to better distinguish hemp and marijuana, separate federally funded research published earlier this year detailed 2 new ways researchers say they've discovered to test samples. Well, you guys. This is a pretty moist story for today, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. This is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News Hour. What do y'all got to say?
California started addressing this when our first regulations came out. And I had lots of discussions with my clients, especially those that were distributors, about how you're going to not have this problem. Because under California law, this is false advertising. If you advertise an eighth at 3.5 grams and it turns out that it's less than that, then it's false advertising and you can get yourself in trouble. And who's responsible? So we put it into contracts, how you're going to handle these samples once they're certified and weighed. What's the handling and storage standards after that? And then insurance companies had to come in because other ones ultimately have to come in and reimburse this. So it's good to see at a national level they're deciding 3%, because if you've ever grown this plant, you know it starts out wet as hell. And by the time you're prepared to put it into some sort of a storage unit and send it off, it's lost the vast majority of its water content. And how that gets handled, because that leads to mold, mildew, and all sorts of things if you don't have low enough water content. But if it loses too much water as it's going through the system and it's low on its weight, and you have legal problems. So it's good to see 3% been looking at a standard, because that, I think, is fairly common for plant-based products out there.
Fair enough. And shout out to the C word, who says, never ask a female cannabis plant her weight.
Raw.
That is good. Oh, look at this. We got Jenny Beth has decided to make it. Jenny, we just talked about moistness in cannabis. Yeah, and why the hell are they using Oregon as an example in this, which absolutely makes no sense to me, because they serve cannabis deli style in Oregon. So why would people be complaining about moisture loss in their products?
You want me to tell you?
Sure.
Okay, so they serve it deli style in Colorado too, by and large, right? And here's the problem.
Yeah, but that's dry world.
Oh, will you stop? You said yeah. I'm gonna explain it.
Come on, go ahead. You just got in. You're already late, so.
I know. Diet Coke in hand. But yeah, so basically they're opening and closing these jars, and they're putting a dry moisture pack in there that they don't want to buy.
That just ruins the weed.
I know, it's terrible. You're sucking terpenes out. You're doing a lot of issues. I actually consulted for one of those companies that manufactures those. Shout out to them for trying to find a way not to suck terps out. But they're rehydrating these bags and sinks, and honestly, they're probably not doing a proper dry and cure process to begin with. So their product is not shelf stable. So then they're opening it and closing it, opening it and closing it. So yeah, it's probably pretty crusty.
Interesting. I'm still not buying that, because it's pretty. It's not crazy dry in Oregon. It rains a lot up there. They got a lot of moisture in the air. All of that. I'm not buying that as the reason.
So Jenny Beth, good to have you on with us. Is being the moisture expert on the show today.
I don't want to speak about. Listen, Rico.
Would you say there's more moisture locked into towelettes or wet naps? Go.
I would probably go with the towelette, unless you leave the packet open or open and close it. You know, like your dude wipes, and they start out real nice and refreshing, and then you use them for a couple weeks, and your butt's kind of getting crunchy. That's kind of like.
I've never had that happen.
Okay.
I've never had that happen.
I just take showers and just don't wear underwear, so you know. It's
so you're just swampy,
it's always
super
breezy.
moist. Got it. Good job, Rico.
Nah, man, I'm too cool for that, man. No, but seriously though, that's why I moved out west, man. I sweat like a motherfucker, so that's why I moved out west, because it's less humidity out here. So I don't like none of that shit. So on a personal note.
And shout out to Wipies, because, you know, if you're not using Wipies, you're probably not that clean.
You probably use a bidet.
Real talk, man. Shout out bidets.
Yes, bidets.
Yeah, Yarrow, I think you're on mute, Yarrow. I think you're on mute, buddy.
I was just wondering how Jenny had such a granular knowledge of the men's nether regions when their hygiene game isn't at top 10. Like,
I
you
avoid
just
those.
had a
You
lot
gotta
of.
do a sniff test, Yarrow, and then you get away from there.
Oh my god.
The sniff test. The sniff test.
the flyby?
Yeah. She's smelling for terps. She's smelling for sweat terps.
Wow, that's
Oh
gross.
God, that is justice served.
Yes. And on
if she don't pass the flyby, get an Irish bye-bye.
Irish
Right.
goodbye.
Literally, gotta go to the
Oh
bathroom.
man. And shout out to Moisture for this story. We appreciate you, Moisture.
Moisture for the win.
Yeah, without moisture, we'd all be thirsty. But nonetheless, we're going to roll into a commercial, and we're going to be right back.